I didn't plan to make a video about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I don't turn videos around weekly, and I'm not really interested in reaction style content. But episode 4 stopped me cold, because buried inside what looks like a small, almost comic moment is one of the most devastating ideas George R. Martin returns to again and again. This is a story about fathers, about what makes a good one, what makes a bad one, and whether the same man can be both. Near the end of the episode, Dunk asks a simple question: who will stand and fight with me? And in the crowd, a little boy looks up at his father, eyes full of hope, wanting him to be the hero of song. And in that moment, everything about who that child will become is decided. I love the Duncan Egg novellas, so I've been genuinely pleased to see such a high-quality adaptation. I'll admit, after what's happened with House of the Dragon, I was a little worried they might not do this story justice, because these stories are small and intimate by design. Yes, the novellas quietly expand the lore of A Song of Ice and Fire, if you know where to look. And I do plan to talk about that in future essays. But at their heart, these are condensed, deeply human stories. And with only a few minor changes, the writers have captured that essence perfectly. Episode 4 in particular stands right up there with some of the strongest episodes of Game of Thrones, and in my opinion, surpasses anything we've seen so far in House of the Dragon. But instead of recapping plot or debating canon, I want to talk about something quieter and far more central to Martin's world: fatherhood. Ser Arlan of Pennytree was Dunk's father, not by blood, but in every way that mattered. He took a boy off the street, fed him, clothed him, taught him right from wrong, taught him what it meant to be an honorable man. But Ser Arlan was not an easy man. Life as a hedge knight never is, and Dunk tells us plainly that his father was harsh. The flashback shows a man who could be cruel, who could be abusive. Dunk also tells us that, except for one time, he deserved the beatings, but abuse is still abuse. And yet, Ser Arlan shaped Dunk into a man who steps forward when others don't, a man who protects the innocent, a man who answers the call. Ser Arlan was flawed. He caused harm, and perhaps he carried a secret of his own. There is strong evidence, both in the books and in the show, that Dunk may never have been knighted at all. And if that's true, one has to ask why. When Ser Arlan was dying on the road to Ashford Meadow, knowing his end was near, why would he not knight the boy he had raised as a son? The show offers two quiet, almost painful hints. As Lionel Baratheon knights Raymond Fossoways, we cut to Dunk, not remembering, but imagining, wishing. He kneels before Ser Arlan as before a hero, and Arlan shrugs, almost gently, as if to say, I can't give you what I never had. Then in a flashback, young Dunk asks, am I to be a knight one day, sir, as you are? We don't hear an answer. Ser Arlan looks away. He spits out a piece of fruit. It is the silence that speaks. And if Ser Arlan was never knighted himself, then what we are watching is not a lie of ambition, but a lie of inheritance. Honor is not inherited through titles. It is learned by watching. And these two men, these two possible liars, may be among the most honorable knights in all of Westeros. Which brings us to Maekar Targaryen. From everything we've seen so far, Maekar seems like a bad father. There are strong hints that he abuses his sons, or at least treats them with a harshness that by modern standards we would absolutely call abuse. Egg tells us his father treats his sons no better than his horses, and we know how Maekar treats his horses. But here's the uncomfortable question. Are Maekar's actions actually worse than what we saw from Ser Arlan? Maekar has 4 sons. One of them, Maester Aemon, will one day meet as an old man on the wall. None of them are like Aerion. Aerion is different. Is Maekar to blame for what Aerion becomes? I would argue no. Aerion isn't the result of bad parenting alone. He's a bad seed, a special case. You can even make the argument that what we're seeing is the Targaryen madness surfacing early. And I wonder if Maekar's harshness is in part a response to that. In a medieval world with no understanding of psychology, no concept of therapy, how do you control a son like Aerion? Raymond Fossoways tells Dunk that Aerion behaves himself when his father is present, but the moment Maekar leaves the search for Darien and Egg, Aerion's true nature comes roaring to the surface. Maekar seems like a bad father, but he's also a man trying, badly yes, to contain something dangerous. And before the series ends, we'll see just how complex a character he truly is. What matters isn't whether Maekar or Ser Arlan were good men. What matters is that both believed they were shaping their sons for survival, and only one of them succeeded in teaching restraint. Then there's Baelor Breakspear. We haven't seen much of his relationship with his son Valar to judge, but everything we've seen of Baelor suggests a different model of fatherhood. Baelor didn't come to Ashford Meadows to joust. He isn't seeking glory, and when the moment comes, he borrows his son's armor, not to dominate, but to stand for what's right. That choice alone tells us volumes. And without spoiling what's to come, the final episode may give us a clearer picture of the father-son dynamic that existed between Baelor and Valar. One built not on fear, but on example. Baelor Breakspear answers the call, and someone very important is watching. Not all fathers in this story are biological. In Westeros, a knight raises his squire much the way a father raises a son. And in the Fossoways, we see both sides of that coin. Stefan Fossoway breaks his knightly oath without hesitation. He treats Raymond as beneath him, ignoring not just familial ties, but the responsibility he has as a mentor. He abuses him, and Raymond, like so many sons in this world, is forced to learn what not to become. Which brings us to the quiet tragedy at the heart of the episode. Everyone talks that fart, but almost no one talks about what happens right before it. The stands are full of fathers and sons, and when Dunk says he follows Ser Arlan's example, as your sons will follow yours, and asks who will stand with him, the Bracken boy looks at his father. His eyes are full of hope. He wants his father to be the hero. For a moment, it looks like the brute of Bracken might rise to meet that expectation. And then he doesn't. He breaks the moment. The crowd laughs. And then the boy laughs too. But something has been lost. The tragedy isn't just the example set and who that boy will likely become. It is how he will now see his father. Because from this moment on, he will compare his father to Prince Baelor, and his father will always fall short and be found wanting. Not as Lord versus Prince, but as man versus man, because Baelor Breakspear answered the call, while his father stood and farted. Watch the wonder in Egg's face when his uncle steps forward. That is the moment the brute missed with his son. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a small story, but like all Martin's best work, it understands something enormous. Fathers are the first stories their sons believe about the world, and sometimes all it takes is one moment, answered or not, to decide which story gets passed on. I love to hear your thoughts on the episode, the father-son dynamics at play, and the series so far. Comment below. And if this kind of thematic reading is something you enjoy, my Martian Queen series explore these same patterns: power, inheritance, and the stories we pass down through Daenerys and House Targaryen. Thank you for watching.